I'm going to go ahead and record this since a lot of people out. And those people out should be zooming in, if possible. So security is a pretty big thing in anything IT. That's not my password. There we go. I have an unsecure short password on that site. So yes, file sharing. We have all the NTFS permissions. We talked about some of these with configuring NTF quotas and permissions, access-based enumeration, sharing permissions. Now talk about NFS down here. I'll start with NFS because I want to make this pretty much as short as possible here on the NFS. So NFS is Network File System. It's used by Unix and Linux. It was first created with Unix protocol and definitely strongly supported on Linux distributions. It is used by major players like VMware Corporation to house things for cloud data centers. And the protocol is quite stable. Microsoft supports it. However, I've never been able to have it stable on a Windows machine. I've had great luck with stability and long-term connectivity to NFS mounts, remote mounts, exports using Unix or Linux systems. However, Microsoft Server, every version of Microsoft Server, except for 2019, I have tested. I have not tested 2019. I gave up on Microsoft. I don't think they've improved it any. The system is not stable, and the service, I've always had to restart it at least once a week. Sometimes it would maybe go a little bit more than a week, but within the 2-week time frame, the service would lock up and it'd have to be restarted. So I don't know why it's not stable, but it caused lots of havoc, data corruption and stuff with the connections being dropped midstream just at random. So I've stopped using the NFS service on Windows unless I need to connect to a Unix system that is sharing off NFS. So if I mount something, but as far as being a server itself, I don't recommend using Microsoft Server as an NFS service. Use it to connect to Unix machines and Linux machines, but don't use it to share out unless you're doing short-term file copies or something. If you're needing a long-term connection, like you're housing a backup location or you're housing like ISO files or a database or something, you're trying to connect it to a Linux machine, and don't do that. Any application is going to be long-term, even like backups that run more than an hour or something like that. I'd use it for short file copies back and forth and expect it to not work and have to restart the system. Not the whole system, just the service. So it's not restart the Windows Server, just go to services, click on the NFS service and restart it. So there's my personal experience with NFS. Don't use it, except for certain circumstances. With the speed of internet now, you know, you can just put it on a OneDrive and transfer files and stuff that way. But it's great on Unix and Linux, great solid protocol, and it's required. If you're in the data center, you will have to implement it, but just don't implement it on a Windows machine, per my recommendation. Of course, the company you work for makes you run it on there. Not much you can do, but because I doubt you'll be starting out as head person. You might be. Then down here, NFS troubleshooting, looking at effective permissions and stuff. Let's go back up here to the top. So this here is a 2-week section, just because permissions are really important. And we talk about quotas and I think we have played with file screening and stuff. Did we do anything with file screening, Land 1? It's been quite a while. Okay. Doesn't ring a bell, so that's maybe a good thing. I don't know. We'll go ahead and do that. This is actually all planned for this semester. Let's connect to server 1. Just because it's easy for. It wasn't a cord unplug. It must have been an environmental area. Anybody live in BB? Dorm person? No? Oh. Okay, so something happened yesterday after 4 o'clock, apparently. So as we've logged in, I believe there are some computers that are not turned on. Wait, can you turn on computers 1 and 2? Robert, check number 5. It's off. Turn it on. And Dustin, can you also get number 7? Tristan, can you get 12 and 17? Also 15. Okay, Dustin's getting some of those, but 15. You get 17 and 15 over here, Tristan. It should be close to the wall, I think. I don't know. Oh, you got that one? Okay. Thank you. That way, if people are wanting to remote in, that would be quite difficult for them if the computer is off. Awesome. I see them turning on. Sweet. Yep. So let's check our setup out. If you go to File and Storage Services, click on Server 3. We've got, I'm going to look at volumes. So Server 3 has 4 volumes. They've got our data volume on there. We've already added some files to it. So it saved 112 meg data deduplication on my system anyway. I just make sure we have that set up. And we do. So let's jump down to shares. Let's create a new share on server 3. We'll create a new share for public. And we're going to look at the default permissions for NTFS, and keep those. We're just going to fix our share permissions. So do y'all remember creating a new share, quick share, location, server 3, and always put it on a non-system drive. System drive is where the Windows folder is. So avoid sharing stuff where the Windows is actually located. So we pick a second drive letter that we installed into the system. just best practice. And you should have picked that up from LAN 1. Share name, public. And it will create it on the E drive in a folder called shares. And it'll make public a subfolder of that for organizational purposes. So on this screen, the access-based enumeration is something that Microsoft has added in somewhere around 2008 server, I believe. I'm not sure exactly when it came in about. 2012 had it. But access-based enumeration was something that Novell Network had way back in the late 80s and 90s and stuff. They were the de facto file sharing operating system, but Microsoft marketing beat them out. Even though they had a superior product back then, their marketing team beat them out. And now Microsoft has enabled it into their system. Everybody had to switch over. Enough big people started complaining that remembered the old days when they could do cool stuff. I don't know that's that cool or that needed. It hides files that the user does not have permission to. So when they open up File Explorer and they go whack, whack, server 3, whack, public, and they look in that folder, they only see files that they have permissions to read. If there's a file that is in that folder that they don't have rights to, it's just not displayed to them. That helps cut down on help desk support calls. When users don't see files they don't have access to, because if they can see it, they can call and go, hey, I can't get into this file. That's not your job function. Quit trying to get into it. You know, you'll end up with calls like that. However, you know, it's not that major of a deal. And most likely, if you have access to a folder, you should probably have at least read rights to all the files in that folder. So just some certain situations that you might use that. Mostly if I guess you're an old school network administrator and still remember the days and organize your files in odd fashions, but it is there because you may run into that scenario. There's trillions of business scenarios out there. So it's there for you if you need that. This is part of critical thinking. There's no way to say you need it in this situation right here. You have to determine that for yourself based on the culture of your company and culture of IT staff and everything, and what you're actually doing. So it's pretty simple. You don't have rights to the file. You simply don't see it when you're browsing the share. But I don't turn it on. I try to organize things appropriately and set things on the folder level instead of individual file level. So this access-based enumeration is individual files have different permissions, which isn't too entertaining of a thought. That's tedious work, slows stuff down if you have to control permissions individually. But say you're deploying out a program like in K through 12 and they're still using server-based instead of cloud-based programs, maybe something like accelerated reader or some client server. So you put that into the system and there's certain files that like a student shouldn't see. Maybe only the administrator account or something else has rights to it. The program launches as two different users when it runs. There could be some scenarios that I've seen in the past where files and folders had different rights in the same folder. No allow caching of share. I typically don't like that unless it's a share only for that user. I think I went over this last year too. Because if they cache something to their laptop for offline use, and they travel around, they make changes to that file, and they come back, it syncs it back to the server. But it'd be a big problem if 100 people are caching the public share and they all have rights to all the files in the system. and they all make changes while they're away on a conference. And then when they come back and all plug in, which one has the right version, since they all made edits and different edits to one file? You break integrity. Remember security class and the CIA triad that we're studying? You'd break integrity, allowing caching. There's also some security. The availability might become too great. So you mess up on the availability and integrity and confidentiality, since it's now being allowed to be cached and seen remotely. So it kind of just blows the whole CIA triad out of the water with that. But if it is a share that only one person has access to, that's the only time that I'll recommend thinking about allow caching of the share, especially if they're a traveling salesperson or marketing person and they have one folder that's just theirs. That might be appropriate. In today's world, you would use OneDrive. You wouldn't do this on a system. So it's obsolete. Always try to have that unchecked. Best practice. And use OneDrive where possible for individual folders. They're backed up. Volume shadow copy and stuff is run in the Microsoft Cloud. You can get back previous versions of files. It's so much better. So, and as before, we always encrypt data access. Why? What's the benefit? How is it secure? Kind of tells you. But do you understand it? If data is changed in the middle of the stream, it can't be decrypted. If they try to inject virus, malicious code inside the stream, you can't decrypt it. Because it's encrypted on the source, the destination has to decrypt. Any changes would destroy the algorithm and it would fail. Anybody trying to eavesdrop can't see what's being transmitted. The biggest on encryption is to stop man in the middle, mitigate man in the middle attacks, and mitigate the ability of changes to be made to the encrypted data being sent, so that you don't get malicious code injected. There are also some regulations for medical and other industries that require data in motion to be encrypted. It's a requirement. There's something called due diligence that you should run into in security class, or if not, you should just know it, that there's certain technical security that is wide known in the IT world, and you should implement that. Otherwise, you could be held personally liable for it. So due diligence, have that checked. If you have an old copy machine that doesn't work to a particular share, set a share up just for that copy machine and documents. Leave that unchecked because it's running an older protocol and doesn't support encryption. But everything else, make sure. Always check it. And if something doesn't work, then you can come back and unselect that. Or research the device that is having trouble making a connection and see if you can upgrade the software on that device so it can handle encryption. Copy machines are a big security issue. The internal hard drives of them. You know, what happens when you sell this is all kind of going to security class, but every single one of our classes is security. The hard drives of the coffee machine, when you buy a new one, dumpster diving. Somebody steal a hard drive out of that and scan all the documents that your company's been using. Lots of stuff to think about. Okay, moving on. I said we go ahead and keep the default permissions, but let's customize and look at them. So a refresher, the best practice is leave the administrators, notice it's plural, the administrators group, full control. Also notice the administrators group is not coming from the domain. It's coming from server 3. It's a local account on server 3. So if you log on with the local administrator account on server 3, you have access to this folder. If you log on as a domain administrator, that account is also a member of administrators automatically because you joined the domain and you have full control. So there's at least 2 accounts inside this group, the local server administrator and the domain administrator. That's why we put this one on there. System is the operating system. It's the kernel itself. It's like root in Linux. Ring 0, right. Windows Defender, backup utilities and stuff may drop to system level to do scanning, compression, and encryption running on the server. So leaving it full control is most likely a good thing. Always keep an eye out on Bleeping Computer and stuff. They had an exploit with the print spooler service over the summer. And one of the mitigations was removing the system access to certain components of the printing system, making some registry changes and stuff too. Creator owner, optional, normally probably a good thing. That's the permissions that the person that creates the file gets. By default, full control allows them to delete files they create. So if they make something by accident, they can delete the file. It's normally a good thing. Normally. But you don't have to have that in there. Let's go ahead and disable inheritance. I said I was going to keep the default, but I want to play a little bit here. Let's disable inheritance. You always want to copy or convert. Never want to delete or remove. So here we go. We start with what was being inherited. Let's go ahead and delete this creator owner. It's going to be interesting, definitely. So users have read and execute. That's the default. They can open up subfolders, they can read files, and they can run programs. When you get memos or your boss tells you it needs to be read only, that's what they're talking about. These 3 checked. I try to point out that in LAN 1, that's normally not a valid setting, read only. Normally I always want those 3 checked. It makes more sense to have read and execute checked. Managers, CEOs, they're not IT staff typically. They don't understand the exact wording of things, so they won't use read and execute typically. You just have, that's where you have to use your logical thinking. Like what really makes sense? I want to be able to read files, but also want to run programs if they're in there. And if there's a subfolder, I want to be able to go into that subfolder too. So I need read and execute, not just read by itself. There's a special permission. Let's edit. So special permissions is down here grayed out. These here are the common permissions, but there are some really fine-grained NTFS permissions that normally do not make sense by themselves. They typically have to be combined. So that's what these are. They're actually a combination of a bunch of fine-grained permissions. Let's look at them. Click Show Advanced Permissions. Full control, of course, is by default full control. It's everything checked. It's the same full control as right there. So either way, full control is full control. The rest of these are a little bit different. Transverse folder execute file. Unix, Linux has the same bit. You have to have execute on a folder to be able to open it up. If you remembered from operating systems class, they have the same bit style in Windows. So by default, that's normally checked. Transverse folder and execute file, read and execute. List folder, read data. That allows you to list the folder contents. Read attributes and read extended attributes. That's when you right click and go to properties of file. You can read the attributes on the file, like archive, system, hidden. They're old DOS based. And then extended attributes are things such as the encrypted bit and compression bit, if they've been configured. NTFS has file level encryption. It also has file level compression that you can turn on. So you can see if somebody's doing something like that. So the special permission says we can create files and write data. We can create folders, and we can also append data to those files that we created. Pretty cool. Then you have stuff like write attributes. Write extended attributes. Well, guess what? That's being able to check if it's archive, read only, or if it's compressed or not compressed. You can make those changes, but they're not checked here. Delete. Those two, delete subfolders and files, and delete write. Both of those are normally checked together. That gives modify. Remember we talked about MOON or MO. Yeah, modify, MODIFY spells delete from the Stand movie. I had to bring that YouTube up. Hopefully somebody's watched The Stand since last spring. It's a great movie. Just that one person. He's an awesome actor. Change permission. Guess what that lets you do? Change permissions on the file. Default, if you're the owner of the file, you have change permission. If you're not the owner of the file and you want to allow somebody to make changes to the file, they have to have that right. And then take ownership. That's something typically the administrator does. Take ownership is given to a person, which would allow them to right click and select if they want to become the owner of the file instead of somebody else, the person that created it. Ownership. Why does somebody need to take ownership of a file? If you already have read and change rights to the file, why would you need to take ownership? Maybe to be able to have change rights to it. Maybe somebody quit and they need to take ownership and you're implementing quotas into the system. Quotas will look at the ownership of the file to determine which files are owned by which person, so they can know how much space is being used. And a quota means you're limited to a certain amount of hard disk space. So that's some of the benefits of take ownership. We're going to leave everything as it is and hit OK. So the only thing we've done is we've removed creator owner out of the system. Share permission. What did we do to everyone? You take away full control and leave it at change. What that does is, let me get a marking tool here. I don't know if it'll record on Zoom or not. What taking away full control puts on a mask, and that's not it. I think it does that too. Basically, taking away full control on the share side, mask that permission. Even if you're the owner of a file, if you're accessing it through the network, just taking away that one checkbox blocks that permission. Even if it's checked. When you set everyone to change, you can't see it, it's blocked. Unless you're able to log on locally to that system and you don't go through the share. You always hit that share permission first. And that's what that blocks. It implements mandatory access control because if users can't change permission on the file, that means the permissions that are on that file are mandatory. They can't change it. Mandatory meaning an administrator configured the system to set certain permissions, or the administrator manually set permissions on a file. Nobody else can implement that. It's normally one of your better security models to follow. So that's why that's unchecked. It's kind of weird. The words are weird on it. When you got change rights, why can you not change permission? Change rights is actually equating to allowing this through. Change specifically allows that. The read specifically allows, everything else. Everything else through. But full control allows the change. That's the purpose. I wish they had, I don't know, change permission instead of full control, but they just named it full control because it's not filtering anything out. If you take the full control off, then there's something's being filtered out, something's being blocked, and specifically the ability to see what permission is set on the file on the NTFS side for change rights is being blocked. Let's add in administrators. What did we have to do here? Is this on a member server? We had to do something before we could type administrators. So awesome. You remember to change location to the server itself because administrators is a local group on the server. The domain local administrators group cannot be found except on domain controllers. So to find an administrators group on other systems, other nodes in your network, you have to click on the node itself, change location. Hit OK. They should always have full control, right? You're the administrator. You got to set all the mandatory access control. So you have to have rights to do that. Cool. Let's go and hit OK. We'll look at this effective permission. That's a nice report that we can run at a later time. Let's go ahead and hit OK and let's create a couple of accounts in Active Directory users and computers. So Active Directory users and computers. Looks like we have minions. We have Bob here. Bob.minion. Let's create another. We'll have to have a feminine name here, so we'll do Jane. Jane Doe. Don't forget, for lab purposes, break the best practice by unchecking user must change password and click password never expires and user can't change password. So completely destroy best practices. This is one dialog box that Microsoft has the best practices pre-selected for you. But we're in lab purpose, so we're going to break that. You normally only select those for service level accounts, meaning you have an account that needs to be created to run a program like a backup program that runs automated at night in the background, or an account to run a database server or something like that. That's normally the only time that you do these checks. Okay, with those two created, let's access the server 3 via our client machine. Looks like we've logged in as Bob the Minion before, so I'm going to go ahead and log in as Bob the Minion. It'll be the fastest because his profile is already created. Will we be able to create files in the public folder? Shaking your head, yes.
We have that special.
We had that special permission that said,
Right, but we can't.
and it said that we could create files and we could create folders. And users is in here twice. We also can transverse folder and execute programs, list folder, read data, read attributes, read extended attributes, and read permissions.
Can you not add create files and folders?
It apparently splits it out. I don't know why it splits it out. Well, yes, I do, because it applies to different things. This applies to folder, subfolders, and files. And that only applies to subfolders. This folder and subfolders. So what it applies to is separate. Okay, let's see what that allows us to do. Because sometimes you just got to try different scenarios just to make sure. So whack server 3. Access public. Can you get into deploy? No, you can't. You remember when we created the deploy share? We set it to where only domain computers had access to it. We removed users' rights to it. We're not a computer. We're logged in as Bob, so we can't access it. Our computer can. If our machine account needs to pull files from it, it can, but we personally can't view it as a human. Only machines can view that. It's getting scary. The machines are going to take over, put us in pods and harness our energy. Okay, let's create a matrix that's going to come true. Let's create some files. Can we create a file? Oh, I can't change the name. Let's look at the properties of this file. Bob is not listed as having any type of extra rights to it. Users is here. We have read and execute. Can we open it up and test? We won't be able to save it. I saved it as Bob too. It's not even a pending data. We didn't filter the right to files. This is only letting me create documents. Let's see. What happens if I move the file over here to, oh no. Didn't want to do that. Save. Oh no, I can't save it. Oh no. Oh no. I don't need to say that. So with the current permissions set, I can append data to the folder, but it was set not to filter that same right down to the file level. I don't have rights to make changes to the file. Can I set read-only attributes? No. Why can I not set read-only attributes?
You don't have any permissions. There's no
Yeah.
permissions for users. Users can
Read and
open it and read it.
yep. Let's go back to the permissions on server one. Let's customize the permissions. Let's edit the special permissions here. And let's change this from this folder and subfolders to this folder, subfolders, and files. And hit OK. We can also, because there's existing files in place, now let's see what's going to happen without putting that checkbox. Sometimes if there are specific permissions added to files, you have to replace them. But let's see what happens without hitting the checkbox. I'll probably have Bob 2 open, which means I need to go over to. I have Bob 2 open. I don't have Bob open. I closed out File Explorer. It apparently had a hook on Bob. That brings another troubleshooting. If you're trying to apply permissions and it stops on a file, and you're like, why is it stuck on that file? You can always use computer management if you have the appropriate permissions set to use computer management, which I don't think we set. We didn't. So I can't show that. We need to open up the firewall, but you can always go in and look at open files and see what users are using what open file on the server. You just have to have rights, have the firewall open to view that, but our firewall is closed. So we need to modify some firewall rules to be able to view that. Well, server 3 came up. Okay. That actually did appear. Some of these are blocked. It would have showed Bob, and it would have showed Bob had access to Bob too. You can close open files. That might cause data corruption. What can we do now? On server 3, public. Users now have special permissions to it. Can I make changes? Still says no. So no. So it's still blocking. Even with all those rights.
Because whenever saving, you're editing and technically deleting the previous version of it. Do you need to delete rights?
You shouldn't need delete rights. If I check right attribute, I have these checkboxes here added. When you modify a file, Windows checks the archive attribute for backup purposes. Without that ability, it appears that it's not going to let you change anything. Can I change permission? No. Why can't I change permission?
You don't have full control.
Because everyone doesn't have full control on the share.
Let's check it.
Yep. So we're still stuck. I create a new file. It's still blocking. Well, it's not good to take away creator owner.
Yeah, you really screwed it up.
Yep. Can I delete them? Nope. Let's take a break. We'll put creator owner back and look at the changes. Okay, so let's check back with server 1. So server 1, let's fix what we broke. Okay, let's go back in. To file and storage services, shares, and go and access the properties of public. You may have to put a plus, hit the plus beside permissions so that you can customize permissions again. Okay. Let's select a principal. And have you seen creator owner anywhere before? Let's look real close. Is there a creator owner? Cert clonable. Nope. Cert cryptograph. There's not a creator owner anywhere. How do we find creator owner? Why do they have this little red arrow on them? What's that all about? They are special identities. Special identities are what they are called. Special identities are, you're a member of those or that person based on who you are, what you're doing at that time. There's a special identity for authenticated user. So if you've logged into the system, you're automatically a member of that group because you've authenticated. You can't put anybody into the authenticated users group. They have to get there based on something they do, which is authenticating into the system. Everyone. You can't put somebody into the everyone group or take somebody out of the everyone group. They're a member of everyone because they exist. So simply existing makes them a member of everyone. Creator, owner, creator group is a special, you are that person when you create something on a file. And the only way to become the create owner is to create something. No cheating, no plagiarism allowed. You have to create it, be the owner of it. So we'll click creator owner, special identity, click OK, and we'll go ahead and leave it at full control. And click OK. So we placed it back. And click apply. So Bob is causing an issue again. Close that out. I'm going to fix the users. Well, never mind. It's stuck there. I guess it'll be okay. We'll just okay out. Let's access that folder again as Bob. Let's create a new file. Can I change this? Yes. Let's check out one of the other files that we've got created. Can I change this too? Apparently so. Let's look at the properties of these other files. Bob now all of a sudden has creator owner rights to them. I want to go and edit permissions. Actually, I want to go under advanced down here. Advanced. Notice Bob's the owner. So he actually did create the files before. He owned them before. He just creator owner didn't have any rights to them. Now that we've added the creator owner, meaning whoever owns it gets the creator owner rights automatically assigned to the file. And so Bob the minion matches the owner, Bob the minion. So he gets the rights of creator owner. That's pretty neat. Can Bob delete file? Yes. Let's log in as Jane Doe and compare, see what she can do. We did this last time, but it's a good refresher. So Jane Doe logged in, I'll access server 3. Whack whack server 3 using the universal naming convention here, maybe. Where's my enter key not working? Is anybody's search working? All righty. I'm going to use Windows R and do server 3 in the run command. If you didn't know, holding down the Windows key and pressing R brings the run command up. Use the legacy run command to launch things. If the search service just didn't fully start up yet, it's probably still building a database for that user.
I just went to Windows documents.
Okay, so I can't save, but I can save a new file. So the rights that we had before to the files, you remember when we didn't have creator owner and Bob couldn't do anything to the files? That's what we have to Bob's files. However, we do have a special right to add new files in here. And the creator owner's there, so we can add a new file, and I created boss 2. If I look at the properties of it and the security, I'll see Jane Doe has rights to it. If I look at advanced, I see Jane Doe as the owner, and Jane Doe has full control of that file. But again, examining the original boss file that Bob created, Bob the minion's the owner. Bob the minion has full control. Jane has the special permissions, the ability to read and execute the file, and append data to the folder, but not append data to the file. Only append it to the folder. So cannot make changes. Public folder like this, probably good permissions to set. People can put stuff into this folder and other people can access it. They just can't make changes. So maybe the integrity side. Yeah, it's available to the people that need to. It has high integrity because only the owner can make authoritative changes to the data. And other people can view it and they can know that the integrity is good because there's just one person that has the ability to make changes. As long as you have a person with high integrity working for you in the first place. Can we delete boss? No. Again, just as I said before, if you didn't create the file, you don't have rights. But I created boss 2 as Jane Doe. I can delete that one. Cool. I want to map public to the drive letter P. Do you remember how to do that with group policy? Let's go ahead and do that, and that will set us up for Friday. We want to start looking at quotas on Friday and file screening on Friday. So let's map a drive letter on server 1 using group policy. And first off, what do we want to set group policy on? I want to set group policy on the minions, Jane Doe and Bob. So now that we got the location of the users we want to set the policy on to map the drive letter, group policy management. Do you remember what we do here? First step. It's quiet. Find the organizational unit you want to apply the policy to. Minions. We're applying it to the users. We've already looked. There's only users in the minions folder. Come on, y'all completed chapter 8, the beginning of the semester. So we want to create a new GPO. Map drive P to public on server 3. I definitely know what that GPO is going to do. Could have maybe you need something more generic. Generic company drive maps. But I'm going to leave it really specific and go and hit OK. Once you create the GPO, I see people already right-clicking and editing. So that's correct. Edit the. Now, which one are we going to select? And start looking at computer configurations or user configuration. That tells you what's in minions, users. So the only thing that will work, since we're applying it to minions, is user configuration. If we were to apply this to if we were to apply this to the server's organizational unit, the only policy that would make any sense to set would be computer policies. So look at the OU and it tells you right there beside each one what policy you can that would make sense to set. It's the only thing that would be red. So minions, users, the only thing that will be red. Computer policies will be completely ignored because there's no computers to read that. Skynet, real people. Be careful, Skynet things. Okay, so we'll expand out preferences, control panel. And I'm looking for drive maps. It's not there. Windows settings. There we go. Drive maps. So what settings did we do? New map drive. The best thing to do for location is to copy it. Like open the share. Copy that path. And that's your most accurate way to do it. You won't misspell anything. I may have to use Alt-Tab to get that dialog box come back up, paste it in there. And that's your best route. You won't make a mistake if you open the share and copy the path. Label. I told you on your final, it's good to put a label. What would I put here? I'm going to put public. And then the third thing that you change in this dialog box is the drive letter. Hopefully this is a refresher that those are the only 3 things that you modify. And these 3 is what they choose to modify. And 99% of the time, you don't use any other option. You don't need to. They're set to what they need to be set. And only under weird circumstances would you need to select anything else. Okay. Cool, it's mapped. But is it? What do you run on a client machine to speed things up? Cool. GP update. Group policy update. Single command, single DOS command, so it's 8 characters typically or less, no spaces. Force is sometimes added in, but I'm going to see if just GP update by itself. GP update by itself did not map it. I'll add the /force, but it mapped on mine. So this is setting us up for Friday. What we're looking at is how large is the public share? Close to 9 gig, right? So that's what we'll look at it again on Friday before we implement quotas. We want to see how quotas work. There's legacy quotas, and then there's the modern file server resource management quotas. They finally, after years and years of not having enterprise stuff, Microsoft finally has enterprise stuff. That's, I say finally, you know, that was like 2008. Maybe 2003 R2, but I know 2008 R2 and onward, they finally implemented modern things, which that's been quite some time. I just had to live with a decade of Microsoft's marketing, making everybody want to run it in their data centers, and then just not having the enterprise availability. Their Office 365 and OneDrive, that's definitely enterprise level and cool. Okay, that's what we're completing today. Let me just glance again. So yes, we're on file and share access. So we played with NTFS. And they have some labs here. We removed inherited permissions. We configured NTFS permissions. These here will be different, of course, than what we did in class. We have not enabled quota restrictions or modified anything with quotas yet. That will be Friday. We talked about access-based enumeration. And if we have time, we'll set up volume shadow copy service. And I don't remember if we set volume shadow copy service up in LAN 1 or not. It was complex to get that set up. We may have, because I may have been worried that you would take this online and not remote in and do all this tasks that you should be doing as an online student. I'm hoping to online students. I do see some that are coming in and building out their lab and following along. We will research that.